Okay. Okay, Trokia. We're live. We're live.
Alright.
And today, chat, we are going to discuss the combat dice roll influence on the damage of the casualties your army does in the battle. And we are doing a mod. We're still on a drawing board to make a new
Yep.
mod, balance mod, for EU4. And obviously, one of the things we all hate the most is when the AI roll a 9 and you roll a 0, when you definitely have better units, better mil tech, better discipline, better morale, better general, and you still lose the fucking battle.
And not just when they do it, but when they do it like 3 times in a row.
Yeah, like, we are in early game, fire phase doesn't matter. You roll a 9, they roll a 0. And then shock phase, they roll a 9, you roll a 0. And then this thing repeats for 2-3 fucking phases. And then you get like 20k casualty on your army, and the enemy gets like 2k. Because you roll zeros in all the shocks. So yeah, that is absolutely bullshit, right?
Yeah.
We don't need that. And that is what we're trying to get rid of. RNG. I mean, not all the RNG, but at least most of the RNG, and, to make it more fair. I mean, this is a strategy game, not a fucking roulette. If I want to play fucking roulette, I will point a gun in my head and I will play Russian roulette. It would be more fun than this Swedish roulette. Alright, so, okay, we are going to limit the dice roll in our mod. The impact, because impacts of dice roll is way too high, right? Like, from 0 to 9, the casualties and the morale damage done by it accordingly is just way too influential. And it just makes, like, okay, we have, let's look at the formula. Okay, right now I'm displaying the first formula. Wow, okay. So this is the dice roll, right? We have, at the beginning of each phase, each side roll a dice. The result is used to determine the morale damage and casualty inflicted on the opponent each day in the 3-day phase. So the total composite dice roll is based on this formula with 6 components. The first one is the dice roll itself, the dice itself. Okay, let's say we have... and at a okay, how do you add a ruler? How do you add a like fucking Interacnum, man? Okay. Shit. Maybe I should change to another country who doesn't start with a dumbass Interacnum. Oh, H-Air 20. Okay, got it. Alright, now we're gonna attack Hungary. And I'm trying to switch between both. So, like, okay. Everything, six things. So, first we roll the dice 0 to 9. And then with the leader skills for that phase, right? Fire or shock pips. So, that is essentially self-explanatory, because the leader skill of the attacker minus the leader skill of the defender, which is the enemy. So apparently if you have a 1-1-1-1 and the enemy has a 1-1-1-1, then it doesn't affect anything. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, that part we might have to balance as well, because the dice roll is 0 to 9. Obviously, we are not happy with that part, right? But leader is 0 to 6. So if we change the dice roll to a smaller value, then the leader becomes a lot more influential. But leader is also RNG in the generation, right? You can literally have, like, I have played a lot of World Conquests, and I know that even at 100 army traditions with offensive ideas and defensive ideas, which is like, 3 more pips, and I still manage to roll something like 2-2-2-2. So that has to be more influential. Like, if you have high army tradition, you should have more pips, guaranteed. Like, right now, the lower spectrum is still too bullshit. And maybe not to 0 to 6 if the RNG still proved to be a bit too much. Maybe something like 2 to 4, maybe. I mean, we don't want 0. 0 is just stupid, right? Imagine you have a 0 fire, 0 shock, and 6 maneuver. That just creates more grievances, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we don't want that shit. We want something more managed. Like, we want something that you can control. So, okay, skills, we have that, right? We have the ruler, we know how that works. That's just part of the dice roll. And then you have the attacker and the defender pips and the terrain modifier. Obviously, we want the terrain modifier to be more influential. The mountain gives you -2. Highlands and hills give you -1. A jungle and shit also -1. River crossing gives you another additional -1 if you have shitty maneuver. And I think this is fine. So mountainous countries like Austria would be a lot, or Persia would be a lot more defensible, which is absolutely what we want, because right now it's a fucking joke. You can put a mountain fort on your own land, someone just not give a fuck and come and attack you in a mountain, and then they roll 9s, and they just completely ignore the -2 because they have rolled so well. And yeah, that's just not great. So we want to keep this terrain modifiers and not, like, people not giving a fuck. Right now, like, Switzerland and Austria are supposed to be a very defensible country, right? But they absolutely do just get destroyed by France and Ottomans.
Yeah, it still ends up boiling down to RNG.
Like, Albania held off against the Ottomans for 30 years in their capital, and now what do we get? Fucking 1 year, 30 days. Just not give a fuck. Like, in fact, Armenia and stuff should be the same. Tibet, for example. Like, yeah, just these things need to be changed. But maybe we will have to revise a bit where the mountains are in the game, right? But that would be something else. So right now we have finally the dice, the pips on the units. The units of the pips, contrary to popular belief, they don't affect how much damage you do. They only affect dice rolls. So why the Ottoman is so strong is that because they have 2 pips against Western units and +1 pip against Eastern units. So, I mean, you may not, okay, that's just 2 roll or 1 roll. Why is it so strong? But we will see that in the next formula in terms of casualties. But at the moment, we are going to switch to Tech 5 units and Hungary as well. So we can essentially see some differences. Like right now, we are going to go there, we're going to attack this. And we can see how things are. These things have been displayed on screen. The dice roll, the leader skills, after the calculating, where 4444 against is 1200. And then we also have the units against each other. The pips should be the pips are the same, so it doesn't matter. What are the pips right now? Like, it's 1111. So the offensive shock is offset by Poland's defensive shock, and Poland's offensive shock is also offset by the defensive shock of Hungary. Same as morale. So essentially, in terms of morale and shock damage, they don't really have any advantage over each other in dice roll. So it all comes down to terrain, which is a farmland, so it doesn't count, and the leader skill and dice roll. Like now, you can see it's pretty same in terms of damage. But once we get to something like this, you can see instant wreckage. Okay, let's go back to casualties. Actually, we should talk about the casualties now, like how the dice will affect everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, and on top of that, I think that also brings us to the question of when a regiment is low on strength, it does lower damage. So if the enemy gets a good roll in the first 3 days, it basically eliminates any chance of a comeback. It's like
It
he
has
can
a
roll a
snowball
9
effect.
in the if he has in the late game he has a shitloads of artillery. He rolls a 9. He breaks your front line completely. And then no matter how well you roll in the next like third and fourth phase, you will die because you already lost too much morale and regiment strength. I think we want to limit that as well. So we want to keep um stack wipe in this game, right? Stack wipe is important. We want to keep it in this game, but we don't want the the overwhelming the first dice roll to determine basically how the battle is gonna go, because it creates a snowball effect. And if you're a small nation with one stack and you retreat, it basically means you're out of the war. You might get stack wiped because when it becomes a shadow retreat, you just like maybe it will move to the province next door and you will just instantly die, right?
Yeah, if you have one unlucky roll, it could just mean the entire difference between winning and losing.
Yeah, and that usually means for a small nation life and death.
Yeah.
So that is definitely not desirable behavior. So we want to get rid of that. So we should put that on a list on the on the to fix list. Okay, so let's talk about casualties. Casualties. Each day, 2 casualty computation occur. One for actual casualties, and a second for morale casualties. But what we are interested in more of the core casualties, actual casualties, because the actual casualties affect the morale. Because if you have base morale damage, and then you have the casualties doing additional damage to the morale, right? So, but I mean, since dice roll essentially affect both of them, if we can fix the casualty damage, then we can already limit the effect to a point where it doesn't cripple your morale as well.
Yes.
All right, and honestly, like one thing to note is that morale damage gets increased if you have higher maximum morale. You can see that on the formula, right? Do you see it? Oh, it's on down there. Morale damage. Morale damage equals to casualties times morale divided by 1,000. And the morale is the attacking unit maximum morale. So if you have higher maximum morale, like France, you do more morale casualties. It doesn't kill more men, but it does makes you lose morale faster, and essentially makes you even more harder to fight back. You know what I mean? Like, because like let's say you're fighting France, he already has more morale. Essentially, it means you have to do more casualties to rout him. But in the same time, he do more casualties to you in terms of morale and forces you to retreat faster, which means that it's bullshit, right? It works both ways. It's a double bonus, right?
Yep.
I feel like it should only affect the health pool of the morale instead of actually making it do more morale damage, since we already have casualties to account for that. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah, just put that on the list as well. That is also one of the reasons why France causes so much grievances. And morale is so strong, like defensive ideas are so strong. Because when you reduce someone else's morale to 0 within 2 fire shock phase, like, what is that, 12 days? You stack wipe the guy. And you don't need to kill all his men. All you have to do is to deplete all his morale. Right? So, yeah.
Yes.
It causes grievances. Well, like, yeah. It just basically is quality ideas. But it doesn't need... It gives all other bonuses as well. That's why quality ideas is a subpar idea group. But anyway, back to casualties. So, we have the computational of the casualties, and we have base casualties is determined by the dice result according to the following formula. 15 plus 5 times dice roll result. So, this is the tricky part. It means if you roll a 0, you get 20. No, 15.
Yeah,
if you
50.
get
a 9,
dice roll 1, you get 20. And every 3 roll, you get a double damage. I should put up an Excel right away so that people don't see. So like if you dice and damage, so 0.
I mean, I think people could probably do the math on that pretty easily just by looking at it.
Yeah, but some people are lazy.
All right. I mean, it basically ends up being your damage, your base casualties vary from 15 to 90 just based off of your actual die roll, not even the total die result.
Yeah. Wow.
So when you start talking about things like the actual general skills, which are also RNG.
Yep. Well, actually, essentially, you can get like 9 plus 6 on when you have an insanely good general and dice roll.
Yeah.
So what is that?
So I mean,
9 plus 6. That's 15, dude.
Yeah. So I mean, like there's more than just the dice roll that's RNG that's affecting this base casualty.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, I'll put it up right now. I mean, these guys have already seen the what you call it, the formula, and I'll put up the list table right now so you guys can see that as well. Hold on. Okay. There we go. Okay, this is the table, chat. So you can see that for rolling 0, you get 15 damage. Rolling 3 gives you a double. Rolling 6 gives you a triple. Rolling 9 gives you 4 times damage. So you can imagine now, understand why dice roll is such an influential indicator in how the battle is going to go. And if you see you rolling 0, the enemy rolling a 9, there's no choice for you but to retreat right away. Because the guy is literally doing 4 times more damage to you at that free day. And you might ask, how much is it exactly? Just imagine if you have a front line of 10 men shooting at you. And then suddenly, during those 3 days, there are 40 people shooting at you. And, like, of course, if you roll a 9 of your own and you counteract that 9, then you will be 40 people shooting at 40 people. But if you roll a 0, you'll be 15 men. He will have 45 men shooting at you at the same time. And if he has a better general than you, let's say to the extreme case of the guy having 15 roll ahead of you at 0, the guy would have 90 people shooting at your 15, doing 6 times more damage. So essentially, that just means there's nothing you can do. And this problem compounds when you're at late game, because when you have a front row full of infantry and cavalry, which already do a higher base damage in the late game, then you have a full row of artillery at the back also firing at you. Mind you, at late game, the maximum combat will go up to 40. So you have 40 infantry in the front, 40 artillery at the back. And imagine you multiply that number by 4 times. So you have 80 people shooting at you multiplied by 4, which is 320 people shooting at you at the same time. The damage just goes up so much exponentially. Right? Mm-hmm. So it just there's nothing you can do again. There's absolutely nothing you can do. That's why most of the late game battles end up in stack wipes. Because in early game, morale is king, right? Because the low base damage is kind of low. And you have defensive ideas to help with stack wiping based on morale. But in late game, that role shifts over to, because the base damage is high enough, dice roll and discipline. I mean, discipline literally do this thing, right? Discipline is like increasing the amount of damage you deal and then decreasing the amount of damage you take from the enemy. And this is exactly what dice roll is doing. So with enough discipline, you can migraine the amount of effect the dice roll has on you. But no amount of discipline is going to be able to compare to dice roll, right? You can have
Yeah.
25% discipline, doing 25% more damage, taking 75% of the damage. That's 50% difference there. But on the other hand, one single dice roll gives you like 0 to 3 difference. 3 roll difference gives you a double damage already. So unless you have 100 discipline there or some shit, like this, that is still more influential than you stacking idea groups and getting so hard to work on these disciplines. And that is completely just luck, right? And essentially, that is what makes offensive ideas potentially a better quality idea group than quality itself because of that 2 pips. Just think about how much you can influence that, right?
Yep, you're just basically guaranteeing extra 5 base casualties in both phases.
Yeah, and on top of that, it actually moves the normal distribution of the general generation, right? So like the average stat of your general is
Yes.
increased by 1, which means you can probably have 3 to 4, and as you said, it's guaranteed plus 5, but who knows? It definitely
Also,
makes you not have a 0.
like, so the way that the points, or I'm sorry, the pips on a general calculated, you get, it basically rolls for the number of pips that your general will have, and then it just randomly distributes them.
Exactly. Actually, it's not randomly. It's like it goes to
There's a
siege
percentage
first.
chance.
No, it goes to siege first. It goes to siege first, and then it makes another roll, and then it goes to shock, and then it makes another roll, and then it goes to fire, and then it makes another roll, and then finally it goes to maneuver, and that fills maneuver entirely. So that's why maneuver always get the most pips at the end. Like you can have 0, 0, 6, 0, and that's also why siege is so hard to get because you need to make a roll of enough pips, and you also need those pips to roll into siege, because otherwise,
Also,
yeah,
the great thing though about getting a higher number of pips on, let's say, fire, for instance, out once fire gets filled up, pip, and the game decides to put it on fire, but it's already full, it automatically goes to shock.
yeah. That's also
So
one of the
like
and since the last one is maneuver, and since the last one is maneuver, all the carry
so great because then you can force random pips to go on stats that you want.
Yeah. Well, but the thing is, maneuver is still the easiest pip to force because it's at the last of the roll. So everything that you didn't get rolled into get carried over to maneuver at the end. But yeah. So in terms of casualties, that is what we are talking here. Like you have, and like if you look at the formula again,
Mm-hmm.
if you look at the formula again, like you can see that is C equals to C base. The base is basically the dice roll because the base basically means nothing. Unless you can tell me that both of the units are rolling zeros and you are sticking with base damage of 15 the entire time. That basically means dice roll. And then you have the attack and unit strength and modifiers and defending stuff like that, right? Like the strength is like how much men you have left, but that is also affected by dice roll at the first day, as we explained, right? Mm-hmm. The first phase determine how much of your strength get lost from damage taken. So yeah, damage will be reduced proportionally due to the lower amount of men. I mean, this makes sense on its own, right? Like if you can't basically cheat the game by having 1 man left in each regiment and then suddenly beating up 1,000 men in each regiment. That obviously doesn't make sense. And what happens here of the damage reducing proportionally makes a lot of sense. But what doesn't make sense is that how the strength gets reduced by just a burst of damage and then completely rendering your units dead and unable to fight back. And then you have the modifiers such as the unit type and military tech levels. And yeah, you have the modifiers in the military tab right there. And these are basically based on tech. So honestly, we don't need to care about these. In
Yeah, those
general,
are
they
fine.
are balanced just fine. Like, there are some tags that are better, like more important. For example, Tech 4 against Tech 3 because it gives a morale. Some techs give, like, say, Tech 16, which gives artillery the +1 fire that it needs. At Tech 22 or 20, I think it's 20. At Tech 22, it gives artillery fire by another +2, which means it basically doubles the amount of damage artillery does throughout the entire game. Now, these are obviously very influential tech, but I don't think we need to do much about it because you should be keeping up in tech anyway, right?
Yeah,
Maybe we can
especially.
somehow adjust the gap between, let's say, Tech 3 and Tech 4, because how much influence how much things it changes, you know what I mean?
I mean, we were thinking of increasing the base amount of points you get and decreasing the
Yeah, so
RNG
if you
on
don't
that.
take the
So
tech if you don't take the tech, that's your fault.
yeah,
Like, we're already working on increasing the amount of points you can get in as a base value, so you can get the tech without getting stuck with a 000 and seeing the ultimates with Mammoth just completely steamrolling over you. Then that if you don't take the tech, that's your fault. Like, right now, we
yeah,
agreed that Tech 4 against Tech 3 is too powerful. Tech 5 against Tech 4 because of new units is also very powerful. Tech 6
yeah,
against Tech 5 is also very powerful because of military tactics and infantry shock and combat width. But on the other hand, if you have what we are doing right now, then it shouldn't be a problem. Like,
yeah.
you're
I
supposed to
mean,
keep up in tech anyway.
and it's military tech at that, which is usually the easiest one to keep up in.
Exactly, and just don't hire a general or as point from nobility, or I hire an advisor, or just national
Yeah,
focus. Like, there are so many things you can do. Okay, so then we have the combat ability, which is, I think, is fine, 10%, 20% and stuff. It's just a
yeah,
static modifier there, and it doesn't really change that much. I mean, it does what it's supposed to do, right? It does what it
yeah,
says it does. It's not like dice roll where I don't tell you what it does, but it changes the entire game. And finally, discipline and tactics. So, yeah, discipline affect tactics and so forth and so forth. And discipline is just
yeah,
120%, 100%. So it's just another multiplying modifiers. And
yeah,
defending tactics is, I mean, discipline also increase your tactics, so it, you know, decrease the amount of damage. It's like
yeah,
if you both have 100 and let's say 20, if you both have the same amount of discipline, that multiplication will become a number one. So it would actually change nothing. Because, like, if you, let's say you do 20% more damage and I take 20% less damage, then it would actually just essentially offset each other and cancel it out, right? So that is fine. But it's one thing to note, though. One thing I would like to note, though, is the combat ability stacking with discipline. I think that might need to be changed. Hello?
I think that's fine, honestly.
I think it is a problem when you have too much combat ability stacked with too much discipline. Because it's a multiplication, it goes up exponentially. You know what? You see where I'm
Sure.
going? It's like, oh, I have
Yeah,
10% combat
I see what you're
ability.
saying.
10% combat ability multiplied by 110% discipline, right? That
I
would
think that's
be,
mostly in there just so you don't have people who are just focusing on one stat over the other.
yeah, but what I'm saying is, for example, because it's a multiplication, right? So if you have, as I just said, if you have 10%, 10%, that's like, and they multiply together, it's 1.1 multiplied by 1.1. That is just 1.21. The result is 1.21. It's 20% increase in damage, right? In casualties, right? But let's say,
Essentially, yeah,
yeah. If you have something like Sweden, right? 20% combat ability, and then you multiply by, say, 10% discipline, because it's easy, the advisor and the national ideas, right?
yeah,
Then it's already 32%. And if you take some nonsense like innocent quality and jack it up to 50% combat ability. With the same discipline, you're getting 65% already. See where I'm going? And then, since you're taking quality and advisor, absolutism, national ideas, that would be like 1.5 times 1.2. Then it would be 80% increase in damage. And I think that is a bit too much. Like, I think
I don't see a problem with that because the only thing the only comparison I can really make to that is what if you took the 50% combat ability and just added it to the discipline, you'd get 70
that's what I was thinking.
versus 80. I mean,
The
the 10% difference I don't think really
yeah,
makes...
but the late game becomes a problem.
Okay, yeah, I guess.
But late game
I
becomes a
can see
problem
that, yeah.
because it's the
10%
discipline gets
can-
easier and easier to get because like absolutism give you a free 5%.
Yeah.
National idea is 5%. Quality idea is 5%. Offensive idea is 5%. And then the policy of economic quality 5%. It's all over the place. And then religion gives you another 5%.
Yeah.
So stacking up to 140 is easy, man. Like advisors, government, religion, like it's, and then two idea groups and policy.
The
That's
only
already
thing
6.
is, though,
Yeah.
is that when it comes to what's it called, tactics, though, tactics get up to what, like 4? Is it normally by technology?
Well, the tactics is based on discipline, right? Basic,
It's
essentially.
affected by discipline. Yeah, I think I can't remember if it's you take your extra discipline and that's, or I'm sorry, I don't know.
No. The tactics you have the base tactics from Miltech, and then the discipline increases by the amount that the discipline is giving. So if you have 20% discipline, it increases by 20%.
Is it, or is it 10%?
No, it's the same. It's the same as discipline. Okay. It works the same way as discipline.
Okay. So, but the thing is, like, the base amount of tactics is like 3.75. So if you had one, let's just say you had 100% discipline. That 100% discipline, or that one discipline, I should say, at the end of the calculation over the 3.75 tactics means you're actually multiplying by almost, what, 0.25?
Yeah, but
so
as far as, I mean, let's give it based on a gaming experience, though. I would say late game with full row of artillery is actually a bit too strong in terms of damage, like for both sides. And essentially, because you can stack this discipline and combat ability, then you have artillery, infantry, everything multiplying like at the same time, then it becomes kind of huge. And military tactics, on the other hand, like what I'm saying is you have combat ability and discipline multiplying against each other. But for tactics, there's not really a good way to increase it, right?
Yeah, other than discipline. Yeah.
It's like morale. You can increase it by taking defensive ideas. But tactics is tied to discipline. I think there should be 2 different modifiers, like either get discipline or you get tactics. You don't get both in like from the same modifier. That's like 2. It's like it in the calculation is 2 modifiers. It affects 2 different things, but essentially in the game you take one thing and you get both. That's not a good design. That's just like wasted potential, I'd say. For example, defensive ideas. Maybe just morale and tactics. And morale has to be reworked, as I said, not increase the damage, which is bullshit. Let's just say it just increases the amount of morale you have, flat. And then you have the tactics to reduce the damage. There you go. Defensive ideas. You don't go off fucking up people because you have more morale. That's bullshit. That's not defensive. That's offensive.
No.
Yeah. So quality ideas. Good quality. Okay, maybe give us some tactics. Or combat ability, not discipline. I don't know. Something like that. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Just something to think about. Maybe that would make better. Like it would actually also balance out the whole meta of taking defensive and quality. Because essentially, when you have quality ideas giving you combat ability and discipline that multiply off each other, and also the discipline giving you the tactics, And then, on top of all things, it also gives you the morale damage from defensive, then suddenly you have everything from just 2 idea groups, right? And it multiplies
Yeah.
on each other, like everything affect each other. So it's just too good. It's the meta, and everything else become not used, underused.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the thing is, when you have stuff like I think this a part of the game has 2 problems. The first part is the dice roll, which we all agree on already, like the 0 to 9, which beats literally everything, right? This is the first part of the problem because of the base damage being so high. But the second part is the amount of stacking right here. We don't necessarily have to change the formula, but I think that we need to change
I don't
how.
even know if we can.
Yeah, but right now I think some modifiers should be changed or lowered. There's a reason why Coptic went from 5% discipline to 2.5.
Yeah.
And there's a reason why Protestant got the same treatment. And then Hindu and Orthodox came along and with the 5% for no reason. Yeah, I said it for no reason. When it's just not consistent. There was Coptic was 5% during development, and then they realized it was too strong, and they had to nerf it to half. Same goes for Protestant, right? And then there's a reason why. And same goes for the combat ability and shit. I think
I would say probably avoid the combat ability, the discipline, the tactic stuff, and first focus on the die results.
Yeah, I think so too. I think the dice created so much grievances. I mean, if you see some guy who stack a shitload of discipline, at least you know that okay, I don't want to fight this guy, or at least you want to fight it in somewhere better, more advantage to you. But
at least like the discipline, the stuff, it may seem like
it's part of the strategy and the build up
really
of your country.
strong.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's like you're more willing to accept it because it's not just random. It's somebody.
Yeah, somebody is doing it in your face, and you know it all along. But on the other hand, dice roll is something like I don't know what is gonna happen. I'm just gonna play Russian roulette and shoot myself in the face.
Yeah.
So
what is it? Was it generals go from 0 to 6?
I think that's kind of okay if the guy has huge army tradition. I mean, one thing we need to do is just to fix army tradition. So army tradition is not okay. Right now I'm looking at Hungary. He has 7 army tradition, and he rolls between 2 to 7 pips. 7 pips and 2 is night and day. Right? Yeah. And he has 7 army tradition. Let me change it to army tradition 100. Now he has 100. And the leader will get 7 to 18 pips at space. 7 to 18 is night and day. It's more 7, and double of 7 is 14.
Yeah, because the maximum number of pips you can have.
I think if you 100 army tradition is super hard to get. All right, you will get 1 army tradition from each fort you siege down, and if you just fight battles, it gives you minimal. Fighting battles, winning battles doesn't give you shit, and it decays so fast even if you have fully maintained forts and everything. It's not easy.
The base amount of pips should be increased based on.
The base amount should be increased, and if you have extremely high army tradition, for example, right now I'm seeing 7 to 18. I feel
be 12 to 18.
Or maybe 14 to 18.
Maybe.
Yeah. I mean, 7 is just bullshit. We can agree on this number. 7 is completely off.
Yeah. I mean, I only say 12 because that's half of the maximum number of pips a general can have.
Yeah. But either way, I mean, we can always tone that down to account for the offensive ideas and defensive ideas, and aristocratic give you extra pips, and on top of that, national ideas like Kara Koyanu getting +3. I mean, I did actually stack the 6666 before, if you don't know. I did that in my Kara Koyanu campaign, and it took me about 20 generals to get that far with 100 army tradition and all the bonus pips. But
I mean, we don't even have to tone the numbers down to account for the extra tips you get from ideas and stuff. We can
Yeah,
just
because
leave
you're
it
not getting 6666 all the time anyway.
to take those ideas if they want to guarantee that they always get those really amazing leaders.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you go through the trouble of keeping your army tradition at 100 and not let it go down, then you deserve to be rewarded. Because it's not easy. It's one of the hardest thing to do in the game, to keep it at 100. If you really want to keep it at 100, you need to go through like 4 idea groups to get it. You need to take 4 idea groups, like forced to, in order to keep it that way. And it would decay if you don't take them. It would decay so fast. I mean, of course, there's also another scenario where you can get constant 100 is when you're doing world conquest and you just non-stop war everything in siege. But that is a completely different scenario. And at that point, the least you would care about is this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But the casualty rise, the grievances just came from dice rolls. And if we reduce the amount of dice rolls, then we can also increase the importance of generals indirectly, and the terrain. Like, you can fight more tactically, and you need to be more smart. You don't just run straight at people and expect to roll good rolls. And I think like what I said about discipline being so strong is compounded by dice roll. Because right now, if you have an extreme amount of discipline and combat ability, it doesn't do shit if you roll a 0. But it instantly makes the enemy completely shatter at a roll of 9. Right?
Yeah.
It's just the dice roll making this more of an issue. Like, in late game, roll 9, boom, you're dead.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So, I mean, I think this video is a bit too long already. Yeah, I should probably apologize for that. It's 40 minutes.
Holy crap already.
Yeah, but we did touch on basically every aspect of the equation and the whole combat system.
Yeah, and I mean, this is a very complicated issue.
Yeah, I mean, look at the formula itself, man. Like, I don't know who wrote this shit anyway. Let me look at the formula here. Even dice roll alone has 6 components in there. I'm a scientist, and I feel like this is bullshit. And then look at on top of the 6 components, then you put it in the general overall equation, then you have a multiplication of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 components. Another. Right? And then you have the morale calculations, which is, again, related to casualties. So you can basically put this formula into the morale calculation and get more components. Yeah, I feel like this is. I mean, I'm not complaining about the equation being a bit complicated, but yeah, if you want to understand how combat works in this game, like this is a lot more than to think about, like if you want to I want to know how combat works so I can win more battles and take more educated gunfights. And yeah, you get the point. You don't just run head on because you have a good, I have a better general. I'm going to run in. Boom, you're dead. Why? I don't know. That's pretty much the story of my life. All right. Yeah. I apologize for the length, and I hope everyone picked up something between this discussion. And I want to stress this again, how important dice roll is. And yeah, I mean, this actually is one of a video that I want to do for a long time, because I have grievances against dice roll since the longest of times.
Yeah, I think we all do.
I have a huge grievances. I literally complain all the time in the stream. I think people know about it. But anyway, thanks for watching, guys, and feel free to post some questions and join the discussion in the Discord. And yeah, leave a like and comment and subscribe.